Good afternoon. I'm Senator Pat Roberts. I have the privilege of representing Kansas and Fort Leavenworth in our great state. I'm joined by two of my colleagues, and we are here today regarding President Obama's most recent, and I have to say egregious, actions regarding the closure of Guantanamo Bay Naval Base and the detention facilities. I want to point out that the President's overreach in this regard really began his first days in office. He signed an executive order requiring the closure of Gitmo within 1 year. Fortunately for the security of the United States, this executive order went unfulfilled. Instead, the President's attempt to close Gitmo were met by strong objections across the country. Those objections still remain today. It is not even so much as the number of orders that the President has issued regarding executive orders. It's the executive orders that are directly against the legislative intent of the House and the Senate. And this administration has continually gone around the Congress and tried to figure out which button to push to irritate Congress the most. Well, he sure as hell has pushed my button. As I have said for years and years, we are not going to have terrorists from Gitmo come to Fort Leavenworth, the intellectual center of the Army, or any other location in the United States. That will not work. We will not let that happen. We have already passed legislation that really prohibits this transfer, and we can withhold funds, and we will continue to do so. In September, I place a hold on the administration's nominee to serve as Secretary of the Army, and I did so with purpose, and I did it with respect. I articulated this to the Army and to the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense personally. During my conversation, I was reminded that this administration could not implement any part of a study without explicit authorization from the Congress. The administration's threat to act by executive order yesterday speaks to the exact opposite of that understanding. I think this is outrageous, and it's egregious. It's an overstep and an abrogation of the executive's power. Why do we even have a Congress? If the President can issue an executive order on anything, and in this particular case endanger our national security, then what are we even doing here? The answer is that we in the Senate and the House must renew our unwavering strong position. It's a position that we've had for 7 years running, and it will continue. Withholding funding, although the minority has blocked any sort of funding bill, we can hold any nomination that comes forth, and we can continue to express the outrage of Congress and the American people against this threat to our national security. I will turn now to my friend and colleague, Senator Scott.
Thank you, Senator Roberts, for your leadership on such an important issue to our country. Listen, I just returned from Guantanamo Bay about 2 weeks ago, and we have created the world's best location for these enemy combatants. An isolated location surrounded by water, mountains, and deserts. It is hours away from Havana. Its isolation is part of its charm, so to speak. The President in this latest announcement is overcooking my grits. I will tell you that there's no question in my mind that there's only one location on Earth where these enemy combatants should be, and that is Gitmo, for several reasons. Having been there, I will tell you that we have amazing men and women serving in uniform, making sure with great professionalism and character and integrity that they guard some of the worst terrorists known to man. If you think about the fact that just this week, the House, with a veto-proof majority, Republicans and Democrats working together, said without any question that the language in the NDAA must be the law of the land. This is approaching lawless behavior. To consider a location, a domestic location, is, in my opinion, the worst decision for America's national security. This is a settled issue, from polling in America to the votes in the House, the votes in the Senate. We are on one accord. Republicans and Democrats alike have consistently said that the only place for these enemy combatants is not a domestic location. I would say it is Gitmo. I'll now turn it over to Senator Gardner, Colorado.
Hi, Cory Gardner from Colorado. I will not sit idly by while the president uses political promises to imperil the people of Colorado by moving enemy combatants from Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, to my state of Colorado. Look, the law is very clear. The law states no money shall be made available, shall be used, can be designated for the assistance of the transfer of Guantanamo Bay detainees. Several weeks ago, I was asked on a Thursday by an Associated Press reporter, are you hearing anything about a team from the Pentagon that is going to Colorado to look at a closed state prison for the transfer of these detainees? The next day, we found out in the New York Times that that is indeed exactly what had happened. Despite the law making it very clear that money shall not be made available to assist in the transfer of a Guantanamo Bay detainee, that money was made available, a team was sent, that money was expended in violation of the law. We sent a letter to the president asking what basis in law does he believe he has to violate the law. And as usual, we have yet to receive a response. Now let me make this clear. There's been a lot of talk about the prison facility that they are looking at in Colorado. The prison that they looked at is a closed state prison that would take millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to retrofit. Is that part of the plan they have in place, despite the law that says you cannot spend money to assist in the transfer? These are questions that have to be answered. These are questions the president doesn't want to answer. Because if he did, the president would know that he is violating the law that was passed by a bipartisan group of senators with an overwhelming majority. We have an obligation to stand up for the rule of law, and the president has an obligation to drop campaign promises that imperil the people of this country.
Any questions?
Have you guys been briefed on this plan that's coming over?
The plan is still in the planning stage. I just talked to Senator McCain this morning. It hasn't been presented in any detail to the Armed Services Committee, which I think was the agreement. As for me, I have not seen the plan. I think, in echoing my colleagues, regardless of the plan, this isn't a wise decision. We are now at the height. Talk to any part of the intelligence community, the FBI. We just had a Russian plane blow up. Terrorist threats remain very high. Why on earth would you want to put a bullseye with regards to South Carolina, Kansas, or Colorado, in my case, Fort Leavenworth, the intellectual center of the Army, or the city of Leavenworth? Why would you do that? And so I would point out, as my colleagues have, that in visiting the prison that they're talking about, inside out, we have top security. Outside in, no. You'd have to retrofit the whole thing. And then you become a target with the intellectual center of the Army. That just doesn't jibe. What this is amount to, and has been alluded to by my colleagues, it's a campaign promise. I understand that. The president believes that this is some kind of a tool that those jihadists all around the world, with about 9 different terrorist groups, can use to recruit people. And that if you close Gitmo, somehow there will be peace in our time, or they will just cease operations because we close down Gitmo. Think of the other way around. If you're going to talk to people and you're going to use that as a recruiting tool, and what difference would it make, to quote a phrase, if in fact it was the United States? Then you could say to any terrorist group or anybody that you wanted to join, they're holding our brothers in Fort Leavenworth or in Colorado or South Carolina. And I don't see any difference from that than Gitmo. And I've been to Gitmo 3 times, and they're treated very well.
One quick follow-up. Do you have any idea of how he could do something through executive action? What is the...
Well, he's done it before, and he'll probably do it again, but it isn't the 223 executive orders that he has issued to date. It's the smaller number of executive orders that come right at the intent of Congress, 180 degrees away. And we will continue. I'm going to continue. I already have a hold on the nominee for the Secretary of the Army, nothing against him personally, but I had that understanding with the Department of Defense. And the understanding was that they would let me know and my colleagues know of this so-called plan, which may or may not exist or may or may not even be workable, that I would keep that hold on that nominee. We can, if we have to, put a hold on all nominees. And then we have to continue the 7-year prohibition of funding. And that's now in the bill. So this is a lot of, it's campaign promises, it's political. The thinking behind it just doesn't add up. And as you can see, why he certainly has our attention.
Senators, do you object wholesale to the closing of Guantanamo, or are you open to detainees being transferred outside of the United States? Also, Senator Roberts, because you mentioned the plane, I'm wondering if any of you are willing to comment on reports that there was a bomb on the plane reportedly, and that points to the attack, or the plane being attacked by terrorism.
Well, personally, I can only speak for myself, and if anyone of my colleagues has additional information, that intelligence came from the Brits, and we'll see how that works out. I think it remains to be seen, but it's just indicative of where we are and the level of threat all around the world. And it's been that way for some time now. It's at highest level, and so for them to consider moving these terrorists to the United States. Now, the president has been very active in trying to get other countries to take these terrorists, and in most cases the countries say no, no thank you, and in most cases the terrorists say no, I don't want to be returned to that area. But some have, and there is a recidivist, if that's the right word to use, that they not only go back, but they become part of the whole operation with the with all of the jihadist groups that we have around the world. So we worry that they come back to the battlefield. But if the president wants to continue that, that may be the best answer. If in fact that this has to be done immediately.
I would say that the president continues to look for ways, for places to send the enemy combatants without question. I would suggest that having visited Cuba, having visited Gitmo, that its isolation, it's being surrounded by water and deserts and mountains, is the great location, the best location, and maybe the only location. I'm absolutely unequivocally opposed to bringing any of the enemy combatants to America, and frankly, I think we have found the one location that we have spent a lot of money creating that protects the citizens, protects everyone, and is a very difficult location to get to if you're coming to rescue and or support the folks who are being held there.
Cory?
Senators, perhaps Senator Gardner first, and the others if you want to weigh in. Senator Gardner suggested that their laws may have already been violated with respect to sending people out to these site visits to various locations. Are you suggesting that money that was not appropriated was spent, therefore someone somewhere in the government may have violated the Anti-Deficiency Act? And are you asking the Government Accountability Office to conduct an official review of potential Anti-Deficiency Act violations?
Well, thank you for the question. I think we're still waiting on a response from the president to explain how he thinks he has complied with the law. Look, the continuing resolution that's in place until December 11th echoes existing law that says no money shall be used to assist in the transfer. Now, it's hard for me to believe that you can send a team of experts to analyze where you're going to send detainees to fulfill a campaign promise if you haven't spent any money. And how does that not meet the assist in the transfer definition of the law? The law is very clear. I'm simply waiting for the president to respond. And I'm still waiting, and certainly would receive a response very gladly.
Anything else?
Is there any timetable on when you might get a plan, or
I'm sorry?
have you heard any timetable on when you might get a plan?
No, that's part of the problem.
Very much so.
That Senator Gardner has pointed out. You read things in the New York Times that affect your home state and Fort Leavenworth, home of the Command and Staff College, and then calling up and talking to the Secretary of Defense, and he acknowledged that those teams were going out. It would have been a good idea, I think, to call the home state representatives and senators and at least inform them of that effort. They've been there before. And again, inside out, we have security. Outside in, we don't. and you're going to have to take up an awful lot of farm ground, and you're going to have to build a whole, as Senator Gardner pointed out, you can spend a whole lot of money. And so there they are in Fort Leavenworth, the intellectual center of the Army. How on earth does that change anything with regard to recruitment, which I understand is about the only real argument that the president can use, other than the fact he just liked to do this? Started off 7 years ago when he just wanted to have an anti-Bush theme and said that it would really affect the Arab world if we could just close it down. I just do not think that's going to be remotely possible, and I think that kind of thinking is just legacy talk and politics.
Is there anything that could be in a plan that could change anyone's mind? I mean, we always talk about the plan and wait for the plan, and we're waiting for the plan. But is there any real point to the plan? I mean,
Perhaps there is no plan, honestly, other than the fact that the president just said, or his spokesperson said yesterday, that they were willing to consider a unilateral decision to move them by themselves. If that's the plan, then obviously we would all object to that plan and reject that plan, period. Having had the opportunity to sit down with some of these folks that visit locations, they visited Hanahan, South Carolina, a bedroom community, Charleston, South Carolina, where they were looking at and assessing the value of this location, a medium security prison that is about 2 or 3 minutes away from an elementary school, a middle school, and about 5 minutes from a high school, less than 7 or 8 minutes from the airport, near our port as well. How this works itself into a plan, that this might be a good location, I would suggest that if that is a plan, that's really not a plan at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.